The world would be a very dull place if we fully understood everything we ever came across, so we're glad that's not the case. Life gets more thrilling thanks to mysteries, and archaeology is packed with them. Even top experts are often left speechless by the amazing finds they made. But if you ask us, that only makes their findings even better. Right here, we're going to explore some of the most extraordinary ancient discoveries that prove our ancestors knew more than us. Number 15. The monumental megaliths of Alcalar. In the rolling hills of southern Portugal lie the monumental megaliths of Alcalar, an ancient cemetery of 18 tombs that once formed a fortified necropolis. Built more than 5,000 years ago, the site overlooks what is now the Portimão region, though back then it was home to a completely different culture. The tombs were built in rectangular and circular shapes, many linked by corridors and aligned toward the hills. One structure, Tholos 7, stands out from the rest. Shaped like a beehive, it features a descending passage and a central burial chamber, unlike any of its neighbors. It's widely believed that this tomb was reserved for the community's leader, though no written records exist to confirm it. Gold and copper artifacts found nearby suggest a hierarchical society that buried its elite with valuable goods. The original name of the civilization that built Alcalar has been lost to time, but what they left behind still stands: weathered stone, deliberate design, and a message we haven't yet learned how to read. Number 14. Bayan Quest medical text from a mountain tomb. In ancient China, if you were ill, your only hope was Bayan Quest, a physician known for performing miracles and diagnosing illness with eerie precision. His story lived on through oral legends and old scrolls, but many think he was more myth than man. That changed in 2013, when archaeologists recovered nearly 1,000 bamboo strips from a Han Dynasty tomb on Laguan Mountain in Hunan Province. Once deciphered, the strips turned out to be instructional texts written by Bayan Quest disciples. They covered treatments for dermatology, gynecology, orthopedics, and ophthalmology, fields often thought to have evolved centuries later. Even acupuncture points were noted, possibly linking the practice's origins directly to Bayan Quest. According to legend, he once managed an inn before receiving mystical medical knowledge from a wandering sage. Whether that part is true or not, the recovered writings prove he left behind a real and functional system of medicine. He may not have performed literal miracles, but in his time, he was undeniably ahead of it. Number 13. Chhattisgar cave paintings of mystery. Within the caves of Chhattisgar lie rock paintings estimated to be around 10,000 years old, and they've baffled researchers for decades. Some claim these images depict aliens, spaceships, and helmeted figures. The team that studied them was so intrigued, they contacted the Indian Space Research Organization to investigate. Even if the extraterrestrial interpretations seem far-fetched, what's on the walls is undeniably strange. Among depictions of native animals, there are giraffes and kangaroos, species never known to have existed in ancient India. So how did those artists know what to draw? Even more peculiar are the images of humanoid figures descending from what appear to be disc-like flying objects. Their heads are oversized, or they wear what resembles helmets. Some nearby images even show bizarre half-human, half-fish beings. Are these symbolic gods, ritualistic visions, or something more literal? No one can say for sure. But whatever inspired them wasn't part of everyday village life, and no explanation fits every image. Number 12. Gotland sits grooves and the sun tracking mystery. Across Sweden's Gotland Island are hundreds of long, deep-cut grooves etched into limestone. For decades, they were dismissed as primitive sword-sharpening marks, hence the nickname sharpening stones. But over time, researchers began to doubt that theory. The grooves are too broad and uniform for any known blades from the Stone Age to the medieval period. Plus, no matching weapons have ever been recovered nearby. Some scholars now believe these incisions were used for astronomical purposes, likely as part of a rudimentary calendar system. When aligned, many of the grooves point towards solar or lunar events, such as solstices or equinoxes. Others suggest they were ritualistic, made to channel something spiritual or simply serve as territorial markers. What complicates things further is that similar grooves appear across the island, always carved outward and often placed where they face the sky. These are not random scratches, they reflect intention, an unknown function grounded in knowledge we may never recover. For now, they're just called Gotland grooves, and their purpose is still debated. Number 11. Wanha Hera Diving Suit. The Wanha Hera diving suit, also called Old Gentleman, is a strange piece of 18th century Finnish ingenuity. Donated to a museum in Rahi in 1860, it's believed to date back to the 1720s and is credited to a sea captain known only as Lufsta. The suit is made entirely of heavy cowhide, stitched tightly with wax thread, and sealed with resin and pork fat to ensure it remains watertight. It wasn't meant for deep-sea diving. Instead, it allowed ship captains or crew to inspect the hulls of their vessels while docked for repairs. Breathing was only possible through a wooden air tube that extended above the waterline. The suit was cumbersome and stiff, offering very limited movement, but it worked well enough for basic underwater inspection. Though it looks more like something from a post-apocalyptic video game than naval history, it's an authentic early attempt at underwater engineering. The fact that it still exists makes it one of the earliest surviving diving suits in the world. What do you think about it? Well, let us know. Number 10. The Ashango Bone. If we're trying to locate the oldest known calculator, we might not find it in 20th century shops or ancient Chinese abacuses, but in the 22,000-year-old bone found near the headwaters of the Nile in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Carved into the fibula of a baboon, the bone contains 3 distinct columns of notches, groups carefully arranged, not randomly etched. The left column includes numbers 11, 13, 17, and 19, consecutive prime numbers adding up to 60. The center displays repeated groups of 8. The right column also adds to 60 using different combinations. These aren't idle scratches, they reflect intentional counting, logic, and perhaps the earliest known use of a base system. Some researchers believe the bone's purpose was mathematical, maybe for tracking lunar phases or solving rudimentary equations. While it's impossible to decode its full use without context, it's clear that whoever made the Ashango bone had more than basic survival in mind. This object pushes human intellectual history far deeper than books usually allow. Number 9. The nail-armored bear hunting suits of Siberia. Hunting bears in 19th century Siberia wasn't just dangerous, it was practically warfare. Hunters didn't rely on luck. They relied on armor. Strange-looking suits, stitched from multiple layers of leather, were reinforced with hundreds of sharp, inch-long iron nails. The result? Outfits that resembled walking torture devices, part defense mechanism, part deterrent. These weren't elegant or comfortable. They were built with one purpose: survival. If a bear attacked, the nails would pierce its paws or muzzle, discouraging a second blow. They couldn't stop a determined animal completely, but they might delay it just enough for the hunter to escape or retaliate. The suits also prevented bites from sinking in, making them a last line of defense. Though they looked absurd, they were practical for the brutal task at hand. Today, they sit in museums as odd relics, but in their time, they represented one of the few lines between life and death in a region where bear attacks weren't folklore. They were part of the job. Will you do that job? Number 8. The Cairn of Listegeel. Ireland is dotted with ancient sites, but few match the enigma of Listegeel, the largest cairn within the Carrowmore tomb complex in County Sligo. Positioned at the center of the layout, this tomb is the only one shaped like a cairn and was compared by early archaeologists to nearby Queen Maeve's cairn on Knocknarea. But no other structure of its kind has been found. The cairn sits at the highest elevation within Carrowmore, surrounded by dolmens and passage tombs. When 19th century archaeologists arrived, many of its stones had already been looted by quarrymen. Still, enough remained to recover horse bones, charcoal, javelin tips, and flint tools, some of which now reside at Alnwick Castle. Radiocarbon testing later dated the burial activity here to nearly 5,500 years ago. Inside, etched into one of the chamber's largest slabs, is a solitary triple spiral, its meaning unknown, its origin uncertain. Like the rest of the cairn, it hints at a spiritual world we're no longer equipped to understand. Alright, now let's move to number 7. The sunken monolith of Sicilian. In 2015, marine researchers conducting high-resolution seabed mapping stumbled across a colossal monolith submerged off the coast of Sicilian. Found on the Pantelleria Vecchia bank, an ancient seafloor shelf about 40 miles south of the island, the structure measures over 40 feet long and is broken into two. There's no doubt it was built by humans. The monolith features 3 precisely bored holes which couldn't have formed naturally. Some say they once held wooden poles or torches, leading to speculation that the structure served as a kind of ancient lighthouse. That would make it the oldest known example, if true. Geological evidence shows the bank sank beneath the sea around 9,500 years ago, placing the monolith's creation at least that far back in time. The idea that a prehistoric society had the tools, knowledge, and manpower to construct such a monument, then anchor it underwater, challenges conventional thinking. With no inscriptions or known cultural ties, the monolith stands as an artifact without context. Number 6. The Pyramid of Menar and its conflicting story. While the Giza Plateau is best known for its towering pyramids, the smallest of the trio, the Pyramid of Menar, carries some of the site's strangest contradictions. Built roughly 4,300 years ago, it holds an empty basalt sarcophagus, a wooden coffin lid, and some unidentified bones. None of this aligns neatly. The wooden fragments and human remains were later dated to the early Christian era, implying that someone reused the pyramid for burial long after it was first sealed. The original sarcophagus, thought to belong to Menar, was lost when the ship carrying it to England sank near Spain. Unlike the other Giza pyramids, which were built using limestone, this one was constructed using granite, an expensive and more labor-intensive material. Some scholars believe Menar died before the structure was finished, which may explain inconsistencies in its layout. With its reused chamber, missing coffin, and odd construction choices, the Pyramid of Menar tells a less polished story. Number 5. The Pyramid of Senniset III and the Graffiti Mystery. While Egypt's most iconic pyramids dominate the Giza Plateau, the Pyramid of Senniset III at Dahshur tells a more rugged story. Built nearly 4,000 years ago from limestone and mud brick, this structure is less pristine, but equally compelling. Among its corridors, archaeologists found unusual graffiti, one image depicting a human face with a hairstyle oddly similar to modern fashion. The pyramid may have been disturbed during the Hyksos occupation around 2,800 years ago, and it's possible the graffiti was added then. While multiple sarcophagi belonging to Senniset's female relatives were found inside, the pharaoh's remains were never located. Some believe they were looted. Others suggest he may have chosen to be buried elsewhere, possibly in his birthplace, Abydos. The structure's missing king and strange markings have turned what should be a textbook royal tomb into something far more puzzling. It's not just a burial site, it's a monument filled with loose ends, unanswered questions, and signs that history didn't unfold. Number 4. Coffin Torpedoes. In the 19th century, grave robbery became so common in some areas that families took extreme measures to protect their loved ones' final resting places. Among the most drastic of these inventions was the coffin torpedo, a device designed to violently stop body snatchers. The first known patent came from Philip K. Clover in 1878, who created a spring-loaded mechanism inside the casket lid. When opened, it triggered a small explosive filled with lead pellets lethal to anyone trying to disturb the grave. A few years later, Thomas N. Howell developed a more sophisticated version that functioned like a pressure-sensitive landmine. The coffin torpedo was a short-lived solution, but deadly enough to get the job done. Black market cadaver sales were lucrative, especially for medical schools needing fresh specimens. But as regulations tightened and public outrage grew, the demand and the danger declined. By 1913, these morbid gadgets had mostly disappeared. Still, the idea says everything about the fear and desperation of the era. Number 3. Canterbury Cathedral Sundial. This sundial was found during a 1938 excavation in the Great Cloister. Measuring just over 2 inches, it's a rare and finely crafted Anglo-Saxon artifact made of silver with a gold cap, chain, and pin. The cap is decorated with intricate patterns, including a beast's head at the end. The chain and pin also feature animal heads, 2 of which still hold original gem-inlaid eyes. Latin month names are engraved in pairs on both sides of the dial, and 3 lines run across its face to calculate different times of day. The edges also bear inscriptions reading, "Health to the maker, peace to the owner." Dating to the 10th century, the piece was most likely used to estimate prayer times by the sun's angle. Although its original owner remains unknown, it's often associated with Saint Dunstan, Archbishop of Canterbury, patron saint of goldsmiths, and a known musician and craftsman. This sundial remains one of the finest surviving pieces of Anglo-Saxon precision metalwork. Number 2. The Cliff Palace of Mesa Verde. Tucked into the sandstone cliffs of Colorado's Mesa Verde National Park stands one of the most complex ancient residential sites in North America. Built by the ancestral Pueblones in the late 1200s, the Cliff Palace includes more than 150 rooms and over 20 ceremonial spaces known as kivas. The structures, plastered in faded reds, pinks, and yellows, were crafted from adobe and stone, stacked neatly into the natural alcoves of the cliff face. It wasn't just a living space, it functioned as an administrative center, spiritual hub, and likely even a defensive stronghold. Despite its size and engineering brilliance, the Cliff Palace was occupied for barely a century. Around 1300 AD, the inhabitants abandoned it, most likely due to prolonged drought or resource strain. No written record explains their departure. The stone dwellings remain silent, still clinging to the rock walls. They offer no final word, only remnants of a community that thrived, organized, and vanished without ever leaving behind the reason why. Number 1. Denisovans and the ghost lineage of humans. The origins of modern humans remain a battlefield of theories, but in 2013, one genetic study pushed the limits even further. At a Royal Society conference in London, researchers presented a finding from Denisven DNA that shook the room, genetic traces from an unknown, older species. The Denisovans, an archaic human group discovered in a Siberian cave, were already known for sharing DNA with Neanderthals. But this new genetic marker didn't match anything in our existing fossil record. It wasn't Neanderthal. It wasn't human. It was something else. The remains, a tooth and a finger bone, revealed a hidden ancestry, suggesting interbreeding with a third species. The ghost lineage, as it's called, came from Asia, but its identity remains unresolved. This changes the way we view our family tree. It's not a simple line. It's a tangled mesh of lineages, some lost to time. Denisovans didn't just inherit traits. They were the product of a much older, deeper evolutionary story we still don't fully understand. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you very soon.